Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you some of the monsters I've collected for my Dwarf army and giving you my thoughts about Reaper Bones in general.
Scruffy Crow.
So hopefully by now, if you haven't seen already, I scratch built this Indrik. It's my own work, sculpted from Fimo, and you can see that in one of my other videos if you want to check. But I also wanted sort of the other monster options. Obviously these aren't all going to get table time at the same time, but they'll sort of come in and out. And what I actually kind of want to talk about is where I got them from. So you might have seen my giant video. He's a lovely looking, nice quality giant, and he is a Reaper Bones model. So he's all squishy, and he was very affordable. I've used Reaper Bones for stuff before. I picked up quite a few Reaper Bones bits and pieces when I was playing Frostgrave, so I could build up a large menagerie fairly cheaply. And I picked up these actually for Frostgrave, and I've actually, the reason why they're half painted, or well, half undercoated, is because I decided to rebase them for this. So these, sticking with a sort of mountain theme, are going to be my Eachy, which are sort of known as gangly humanoids with talons. I think in the book it sort of refers to them being a bit more aquatic, and if you look them up on a cryptid website, I think they're a bit more like scaly swamp monsters. But my dwarves live in the mountains, so I thought Yetis was fairly appropriate. So I'll give them a paint and show them in a second. And while I was browsing around the internet, I did spot these guys. So I picked them up for Barghests, because I didn't think the whole idea behind Barghests, ethereal dog monsters, didn't seem very dwarven to me. That is until I saw these. Now I picked them up. They were pretty cheap because I got three in a bag, and I painted them up. Now I'm not happy with the way they came out. I was going for sort of lava because I thought these guys sort of made out of living lava. Maybe they'd sit still as statues until they were acquired by the runesmiths or whatever. But no, I've certainly not done them justice with this paint job, so I might have to re-look at this and try and smarten that up a little bit. But for me, they are the most dwarven an ethereal dog monster could be. So I like the idea of the models, but sometimes with these Reaper Bones things, it is hard, I find anyway, to get a good finish, to get a good paint job on some of these Reaper Bones models. Okay, so my my Yetis, or as I've painted them, my big foots, I don't know. They've come out pretty well. So as I said, these will be my Eachys. I think I had these two on the video earlier. I've got these two as well. These are all the Yetis that they do. I like the models initially, so I thought I'd pick up all the various sculpts, and then once I had them all in my hands, I wasn't that keen. But you know what? Now I've painted them up, I think they've had a really simple paint job. I've just knocked these out today, and they've actually come out really nicely. So that is just Rhinox hide, sandry dust, dry brushed over. Obviously more on the raised parts to give a bit of a difference. They all got a wash, and it's sort of sandry dust and some bone colours. And that's my normal flesh sort of colours. I think these have come out pretty cool actually. So I'm keen to try some Eachys out on the table. So this kind of goes to what I was saying about the sort of pros and cons of these guys. Alright, I'm going to start with the cons and then we can finish the video on a positive note. The main cons for me are the material they're made out of. So things like this girl's staff, that was unusable the way it was for me. I was like spaghetti. And obviously you've got quite a rubbery material, but on something big like this it's not a problem at all. But even this guy had a long staff that just looked sort of wonky and bent. And unlike resin, you can't really bend it back into shape. The second thing for me is the sculpts themselves. I feel these are sometimes a bit hit and miss. So for me, these guys are a big hit. Definitely keen on the way they've come out. They work really nicely. These guys, on the other hand, are a bit of a miss for me. I couldn't get a nice paint job out of them. I'm just not overly keen on the sculpt now I have them. After attempt to paint them up. Same goes for this smaller model. So I've never really painted up a human-sized or smaller bones model that I've thought I've got a really good job on. I've put about as much work and detail into her, probably more actually, than I did into these dwarves. And for the same amount of effort, you just don't get the same amount of quality on the end. And when you think this guy, about £1 a model, she only costs sort of $2.50 or something. So pretty cheap for a character. But is it worthwhile for a model that that doesn't look great? Probably not. And things like this bookshelf, it kind of works on this one because it's all sort of wonky and warped, but maybe the bookcase is sort of an older bookcase. I've had to put a little base on it because it didn't really stand up before. Obviously this is not painted yet, when it just started. But if you were doing something that actually needed straight lines, it'd be unlikely that they'd be there. And the third con would just be the overall level of detail. Because of the material that we mentioned in number 1, and the hit and missness of the sculpt in 2, the detail in these models, for instance, if we just look at this giant's fur, that is not great. Done the best I can, sort of highlighting that up, but the detail, because of the material, I think is tends to be quite soft. I mean, this Yeti though, he's got quite sharp little fur lines, but their faces maybe aren't as clear as they could be if they were made in, say, a resin or even in metal. So now for the pros. I do use a load of bones models, so I do see more pros than cons on the most part. Number 1, first thing you've got to mention when you're talking about bones models is the price. These guys cost a couple of quid each. These guys I think were maybe £6 for the box. Eachy was only a couple of pound. This was like, a couple of pound. And this guy was only, I think it was about £13. But for a model this size, that's very reasonable. I also recommend sometimes, say someone's they're not sure about whether they're going to play Rangers of Shadowdeep or Frostgrave or something like that, just be able to pick up character models for a couple of pounds always seems a bit worthwhile. But saying that, character models, by the time you're paying £3 or £4 sometimes for the Bones character models, you can pick up the Oathmark or sort of Rangers of Shadowdeep models that work out about £4 each anyway. So they're not that cheap, but they're still a very reasonable price. Second will be the range of models. So I can't think of a model I'd rather have for an Eachy than these guys, especially now they're painted up. Same goes for the Barghests for my dwarves. I couldn't in my head figure out ghostly dogs for dwarves, but there they have it. Their range is immense. There is a model for everything, from bookcases to graveyard golems. So the range is definitely a massive positive. If there isn't a model in any other range, Reaper have normally got something that at least do as a stand-in. Another positive, although it is a bit of a smaller one, is that, for instance, I'm never really going to worry about these guys getting chipped or dropped or damaged. They are, once the paint's fully cured on these guys, they'll be fairly hard. If anything, the paint will wear off before it chips off, and they're not going to break. They are, if I can get these little arms here, I can push and pull them. It's very unlikely these are going to snap accidentally or break anywhere like that. So yeah, that's kind of handy thing to have on the tabletop. It's another reason why I use them in Frostgrave. So half my Frostgrave bestiary is bones, because potentially I'll be lending those models out during a gaming session. They'll be on a different table I'm not actually paying attention to. I don't really mind, partly because of the cost we mentioned as number 1, but partly because of this sort of material they're made of. They're probably going to come back to me in one piece, and I'm not too worried about what happens to them. And to be honest, I think that's all the pros we need. They've got a model for everything, they're cheap, and they work. So all in all, they're not the best miniatures in the world, but they are a great way and a good value way to get that monster you need or that character you want for a game without breaking the bank. And I'm sure these aren't the last Reaper Bones models that'll be crossing my painting table. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.